single parent. Mara learned how quiet a house could be after bedtime. Not the peaceful, quiet people romanticized, but the kind that pressed in on her ears once her daughter finally fell asleep. One small hand curled around the edge of a blanket. The toys were picked up. The dishes were drying. The day had been survived, and there was no one to debrief it with. Before the divorce, Mara used to imagine silence as freedom. Now it felt like a mirror she hadn't agreed to stand in front of. She was 36, recently divorced, and the sole architect of mornings that started too early and the evenings that ended too late. She had a job, she was good at marketing manager, reliable, competent, a life that made sense on paper. What she didn't have was a shape for who she was becoming. At work, Mara stayed late, not because she needed to, but because it delayed the moment she had to decide what to do with herself once her daughter was asleep. She said yes to extra projects, to be in the steady one, because ambition was easier than grief. Her coworkers assumed she was coping impressively. They didn't see her sitting in her car some nights, scrolling through photos from a life that no longer fit her, wondering when love had become something she measured in logistics. At home, Ellie asked careful questions. Are you and Dad still friends? Why don't you laugh on the phone anymore? Did I do something wrong? Mara learned how to answer without unraveling. She learned how to reassure while carrying her own doubt like a second spine. On her weekends without Ellie, the quiet became unbearable. Friends suggested dating apps, self-care, yoga retreats. Mara tried a date once. He was kind. He asked about her interests. He didn't flinch when she mentioned her daughter, and when he reached for her hand, Mara felt nothing but panic. She went home early and cried nuts because she missed her ex. But because she didn't recognize the version of herself who couldn't reach for joy without fear, ambition used to anchor her. She'd once dreamed of starting her own consultancy, traveling, leading teams. Now every dream had to pass through a new filter. Is this fair to Ellie? Is this safe? Is this selfish? One night, while folding laundry, Mara found an old notebook from before the marriage. Pages of plans, half-written essays, ideas scribbled with the confidence of someone who believed time was endless. She sat on the floor and wept. It wasn't that she'd failed. It was that she'd stopped asking herself what she wanted outside of being needed. The shift came quietly. Ellie had a school performance. She forgot her lines, froze on stage, and burst into tears. Mara watched her daughter breathe through it, accept the teacher's hand, finish anyway. Later that night, Ellie said, I thought I ruined it. You didn't, Mara said. You kept going. Ellie smiled. Like you. The words landed with unexpected weight. Mara realized her daughter wasn't watching for perfection. She was watching for permission to try, to fail, to be whole anyway. The next week, Mara declined a project that would have meant longer hours. Instead, she enrolled in a weekend workshop on freelance consulting, something small, contained hers. She started running again, not to change her body, but to remember it belonged to her. She let herself rest without justifying it. She also went back to therapy, not to fix the divorce, but to understand who she was now that the role she built her worth around was gone. Redefining love was harder. She began by widening it. Love was Ellie's laugh in the mornings. Love was friends who showed up with soup without asking questions. Love was the slow return of trust in herself. Romantic love, she learned, didn't have to be urgent to be valid. It could wait. One evening, months later, Mara sat on the couch after bedtime, the quiet, still present, but no longer hostile. She opened the notebook again and added a new page. Not a plan, just a sentence. I am allowed to want things. She didn't know exactly what those things were yet. A career shaped by choice, not survival. A partnership built on mutual fullness, not rescue. A life where motherhood was part of her identity, not the sum of it. But for the first time since the divorce, she felt something like trust, not in a person, in herself. And in the possibility that redefining love and ambition wasn't a loss, it was an expansion she was finally ready to step into.